everyone. Good morning. Nice and bright. So I am excited to step in here fairly last minute to moderate this fantastic panel with a fantastic host of cities to talk about mega events and disruption, what it means in meeting the moment, but also what it means as you think about legacy and long-term and opportunities for investment, balancing those temporary needs, but also long-term for before, during, and after mega events such as the Games. And we'll focus on the Olympic and Paralympic Games here because we have 3 cities in the works planning for these big moments in the very near future. We have Paris, Milan, Los Angeles, and then we'll also have some great insights from a colleague who has worked in London as well. So before I get into any additional detail, I'm excited to bring out our panel. Deputy Mayor Pierfrancesco Maran, who is from the city of Milano, Rémi Bergues, from the Chief Operating Officer from Choose Paris Region, Allan Gooch, Major Events Transport Consultant with Jacobs, and Ernesto Chaves, Senior Executive Officer with LA Metro. Today I'm going to start over here with Deputy Mayor Maran. I would love to just give everyone a chance to introduce themselves and share a little bit about your role and your interface with mega events planning specifically for the Games.
Good morning, everybody. I am in the executive of the city of Milan starting from 2011. So I worked to No? Right. Yeah, that was... Hello? Yeah. Better. Good morning, everybody. I'm in the executive of the city of Milan starting from 2011. So I worked to 2 international events the city hosted and is going to host. First, the World Exposition 2015, where I worked on the final part of the organization and the period where the event was present in the city. And then I worked to this dossier for the candidation of Milan for the Winter Olympic Games. They will take place in 2026. So that is my experience. On the executive side, I had the chance in those 12 years to work in different parts of the administration. I am an elected politician by the citizens. First, I started with mobility, then 5 years at city planning, and from 2 years, I'm in charge of housing. So it was a way to see different sides of the politics of a city like Milan.
Okay, hello everybody. My name's Allan Gooch. I'm part of the Jacobs team supporting Metro here in LA for the planning of the transportation for the 2028 Olympic and Paralympic Games. Before that, I was previously worked for 8 years for the London 2012 Olympics, where I was head of transport planning for the Olympic Delivery Authority. That was the government agency set up temporarily to build the venues and plan transport for the Games, and then moved across to the organising committee for the last 2 years of planning and operations for the Games.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Ernesto Chaves. I'm with LA Metro with the Office of Strategic Innovation. Our office is leading the planning and coordination for the 2028 Games, of course, working with all of the other departments at Metro. And I've been leading the interdisciplinary task force that we set up to help us plan for the Games for the past couple of years. Prior to that, I was leading our Complete Streets and Highways team at LA Metro.
Hi everyone, my name is Rémi, Rémi Bergues. I work for Choose Paris Region, so we are the promotion agency of the state of Paris, the Greater Paris area. And so we're in charge of promoting the regions to foreign investors, economic development, tourism, and cinema as well.
Fantastic. Well, great to have you all here today. Excited for a lively discussion and ultimately the chance just to hear from all of you about what you're focused on going forward. So thinking about that moment, right? Each of you are experiencing in the next 1, 2, and 5 years planning for this mega event. I would love to hear, starting with Deputy Mayor Maran, a little bit about what it looks like for you when you welcome the world to your city and your region. What are the priorities and projects and initiatives that you all are focused on in preparing for that moment? And then continuing on, we'll focus on the future with Ernesto and Rémi in Los Angeles and Paris as well.
Well, our Olympic Games are quite different from the one in Paris and in Los Angeles because it's Winter Olympic Games. So we will co-host the event with the Cortina d'Ampezzo, that is skiing venue. We will have a few venues in the city, so it will be a sort of welcome for tourists and athletes. We have the Olympic Village. I think we are less worried of our colleagues about all infrastructure and things to do, because it's few places, and as we will talk later, it was more venues we would have built the same. So it's just to fix the fact that they will be ready for that moment, but we have less things to do. On the other side, we are working first. It is an important moment to tell about your city and your country to the world, and this is a big responsibility for everybody. On the other side, it's always year after year, events after events. It's complicated to keep the fact that people came, but even people living in a place should be happy and feel the opportunity and not just the dark side of big events. That is something we have to build brick after brick, because it's a matter that is complicated, and it's connected with trust of people.
Thank you, Ernesto. Would you like to share your?
Sure. Our vision, I'll start on the transportation side. The fact that these are going to be games where you won't be able to park at the venues for various reasons, but that we think will give a lot of stress to people that live in LA, that are in a car-centric region. So ultimately, we want to make this a stress-free situation. And by that, we mean that we want to have a very well-connected network of rail, buses, hubs, even micromobility options that people can have in the palm of their hand. They know where to go to reduce that stress, so that transportation is not an issue. We obviously don't want to be in the news. That's a sign of success, that everything is smooth. People that are coming from all over the world may be more used to public transportation, and maybe it's not stressful for them. We also want them to have a great experience, but that's ultimately the goal. In terms of the operations, we are working, and we'll get a little more into that later, Carley, but we're working on a number of legacy projects, or projects that we want to implement that will enable us to achieve that vision, but also stay here forever, right? And continue to give us benefits afterwards. We also, just beyond transportation, we want to make sure that these games are enjoyed by everyone here, not just somebody that has a ticket, that is able to afford a ticket, but that we enable and support activities and festivities across the region during the games, so people can feel included in the celebrations.
And Rémi, tell us about Paris.
So to the title, actually, of this discussion, we need to look farther away than just the games, and we live in a world after the pandemic, after everything that has happened. Lives of people have changed, and so the Olympics come at a time when we need to think long terms in terms of economic, social, environmental impact. So to the Games of Paris, Paris already welcomes every year about 50 million tourists, and so there will be 10 million coming over for the Olympics. So of course we want to offer the best possible experience in terms of tourism, in terms of culture, in terms of everything that France can offer. But at the same time, we need to think longer terms, and so we need to think about the legacy that we want to leave to the local populations, to citizens, and as an example to the world. So for us, the Paris 2024 is not only about welcoming the world and the games, but it's also about building the future of our region for the population, the future in terms of innovation, in terms of transportation, in terms of the housing, and so in terms of experience. So this is a broader,
That's great. And I think all of you touched on something which leads into my next question, which is really this balance between the temporary and the meeting of the moment and the legacy, and the realities in not just what is actually being put in on the ground or in the street or the services you provide, but the way in which you do that through governance. And so I'd love to talk a bit about, most of you here are on the public agency side, but, Allan, you have experience working for the London ODA and the London Organizing Committee. So we really have, all sides represented here. So I'd love to hear a little bit from each of you, starting with Deputy Mayor Maran, about how your region is approaching governance and those roles and responsibilities. Any lessons you would share so far.
Well, first, when they had to decide the Winter Olympic city, they changed some rules on the decision level at the Olympic Committee, pushing more on the fact that you have to reuse, to reduce the building of venues that are usable just for the Olympic Games. So Milan and Stockholm, that was the other city that was in the final level, we worked hard on that. And the main point for us is that we didn't ask the committee to have the event because if we have the event, we will do something. We explained what was the plan of Milan for the next years. And we said, okay, if we will have the Winter Olympic Games, this place that will be a student housing, before becoming student housing, it will become the Olympic Village. We are building a new arena because we are more or less double the number of concerts and sports events in Milan. If we have the Winter Olympic Games, we will use this new sport arena for the hockey. But we didn't create, as probably we will see later, any specific new infrastructure because the main investment, they were connected to the World Exposition we hosted in 2015. So now we worked more on how can we integrate a new events like the Olympic Games or whatever other events will the city host in the development of the city of Milan.
Okay, well, in London, it was very different. When London won the right to host the Games, we had an Act of Parliament that set up the Olympic Delivery Authority, a public agency, government agency, that was effectively put together to build the venues, the new venues that we needed, and redevelop the Olympic Park in East London, and build transport infrastructure and plan transport for the Games. And the other key organisation was the Organising Committee, LOCOG, London Organising Committee of the Olympic Games. And their job was basically to put on the show. So the ODA built the infrastructure, built the theatre, LOCOG put on the show. But in terms of mobility and the governance of it, there were lots of different agencies that were involved. A transport board was set up, chaired by the now Sir Peter Hendy, of the lead of Transport for London, the equivalent of LA Metro here. And they managed this board and that brought together all the different mobility agencies from the ODA, the Organising Committee, Highways Agency, the equivalent of Caltrans perhaps, and Network Rail and the train operating companies, the equivalent of Metrolink and Amtrak here. And it was that pulling together that board and all those organisations and making them all play nicely in the sand that actually, I believe, made it a really great success in London from a mobility perspective.
So for LA, we don't have an ODA, but the partnership or coalition that was brought together to put together the bid a few years back has lived since. So that coalition on the transportation side includes us, LA Metro. It includes Caltrans, who owns the freeways here in California, the city of LA, including the mayor's office, and Metrolink, who's the provider of commuter rail for Southern California. So on the transportation side, those are the partners. That partnership was formalized a few years back, not into the form of a new agency or like the ODA, but it's a group that meets every month at the staff level and then every few months at the principals level, and working together on a number of things. For now, putting together a priority list of projects, which I'll get into a little later in the questions, again, the legacy projects that we want to pursue for the games. So we got together to agree on that list of projects, and more importantly, agree to lobby together to advocate for funding for those projects. So that's an important factor. And then moving forward, as we get closer to the games and we get into more operations planning, we're going to be using that platform as a way to collaborate in delivering the games critical infrastructure, like the supplemental bus system and the games route network that we'll need to deliver the games. So it's not as formal as London, but it's a structure that we have to work together with the transportation agencies.
I think in Paris we're pretty much doing things like you were doing in Milano, and it'd be interesting if you could show the map of the Olympic sites in 2024 in Paris. So there are 40 Olympic sites in Paris, and only 5 will be new sites, meaning that we've been able to use existing infrastructure to not build too many new, and so to use also the logistics and the transportation system that already exists to distribute those sites. And also maybe, so I'm not sure if you can find it. And the other map maybe that would be interesting to show is the Grand Paris Express new railroad that we are building together. So we are adding 120 miles of new subway lines. So this is, thank you, this is the subway lines. No, the Olympic sites. And so you will see from the subway maps afterwards that we're using the Olympics, but of course we had the project of building this Grand Paris Express before the Olympics. So just like Milano, we had a plan of the future of a region, and this is how the Olympics fits into our projects. So we're building new lines. All of them will be automated. All of them will be accessible for people that need support to move. And same with housing. We're building housing for athletes, for instance, but these are buildings that should be used for students in the future. And so they will be hosting athletes for the next for the summer, next summer, and starting October 2024, this will be housing for the population and for students in particular. So again, it's just like in Milano, we're trying to think long term, and we have this infrastructure and these projects that we're building, and we'll see how the Olympics can fit into this. So our mission is to get all this ecosystem together. So this is a Grand Paris Express, new subways. So not all of the lines will be ready by 2024. Some of them will be ready a bit afterwards. But all the Olympic sites will be accessible from public transportation. I mean, 100% will be accessible from public transportation, and from bike lines as well. So we're adding bike lines. So our role is to bring together housing, transportation, economic development, and innovation. I could talk about the innovative companies that we're inviting, but maybe we'll get to talk about later. Or
let's do it. I know, okay. I want to hear about that. So, Rémi, you've been at Choose Paris Region USA. You've been in Silicon Valley. I would love to hear, like, where are you guys tapping private investment and collaboration from the private sector to deliver on your mobility plan?
So exactly, we think we don't have all the answers to all the problems, and this is really what we're doing here together today. We're trying to bring together ideas and solutions to have startups start bringing innovations to larger corporations or to municipalities and government to support us. So you were talking just before this panel about urban air mobility and eVTOLs, and so we launched a call for projects 3 years ago together with the French government, with French larger corporations, French universities, to find out companies and all the value chains in eVTOLs to build this future of urban mobility. And so we had 129 startups from all over the world, 31 different countries, applying and offering solutions. Volocopter, which is a German company, will be one of the operators during the Games of Paris. And I have a picture of a Vertiport, which is the airport of the future. It's actually not the future because it's actually built. And there will be a few lines going, so test lines, commercial lines, from the airports to some of the venues. This would not have been possible without the project of Paris 2024. So this is what a vertipole looks like. We've built 7 of them. And so there will be 3 different routes going from airports to city center to some Olympic sites. In the future, this will be used for logistics, for emergency rescue, but it's also interesting to show to the world that we are inventing the future of mobility, and this is 100% clean in terms of mobility. It's electric. So this is also the kind of innovation that the games can bring to a region, to a city, to the future of the region. Another one is shuttles on the Seine River. So we will be using shuttles on the Seine River to bring athletes and people from one place to the other. And this will remain in the future and will be also a new means of transportation that did not exist before the games and will be there afterwards. So as a promotion agency, our goal is also to go get innovation from wherever it is in the world and offer an experimentation area that Paris has to offer. I think this is a great window for all your innovations to come to Paris using the games to show it to the world, and we're happy to bring it together to all the value chains of what we can offer to citizens and visitors.
That's fantastic. Well, excited to see it, and you're the closest to it, so sharing all these insights with the upcoming host cities will be fantastic as well. I think one of the things that you touched on just now, Rémi, prior was this idea of access to venues and venue sites. And I think at the end of the day, right, transportation is reacting to the built world and where the locations of the venues will be. Just recently, Los Angeles announced some new sports and subsequently the need for some new venues that will take place here in a few years' time. And so it's really important for us as the transportation folks in the room to really understand the impacts to that. And I think one of the things that we've seen, maybe an evolution, I love, Allan, to start from the London experience was the concentration of venues and perhaps the building of new venues where needed, whereas there seems to be now a bit of a shift where we are looking for a little bit more of a decentralized model, and some venues may or may not even be within that exact host city or the region at all. And I think, Rémi and Deputy Mayor Maran can speak a bit about that as near term, where some of the sports or venues might be, and how you're also treating that when it comes to governance and coordination with a potential jurisdiction or partners who are farther away. So start with Allan, and then we'll bring it around.
Yeah, so in London, we had 3 broad clusters of venues. We used sort of iconic venues like Horse Guards Parade for the beach volleyball in centre of London, but the whole reason for bidding for the games in London was to support a major area of regeneration out east around the Stratford area, which just wouldn't have happened without something like the Olympics. There were 8 venues built in an Olympic park and an athletes' village there, and the International Broadcast Centre as well. That area had been blighted over the previous century. It was effectively the dumping zone for Londoners for a long time. It had been an area that had been contaminated during the Second World War with sort of producing weaponry, etc. And so in order to develop that land, all the soil had to be decontaminated. And so it was just not economic for any developer to come along and do it. And so that was the reason or one of the big reasons for London bidding for the games, particularly from the mayor's point of view. But we spread the venues across London in order to not put too much pressure on the transport network in any one place. Just like other games have happened. It might happen here at LA. Some venues, I don't know, don't read anything into that. Some venues moved after the bid. We realised that actually that's going to be too expensive, or that's going to put too much pressure on a particular area of London. And things did move around. And I think there is opportunity now in the International Olympic Committee and owners of other major events like the Commonwealth Games, etc., are looking for this sort of decentralised model to to reuse existing venues, even if they are slightly further away, so that the games becomes slightly more affordable and more cities can feel that they can bid for the games in the future.
Thank you.
Well, first, if I can show you the map, so we have also a map of Milan, not only of Paris. On one side, there is something I would consider, especially if we use venues that are usually hosting local events. Probably with much tourists, we will have public transport that will be more stressed than usual and less people coming to the events by a car. That is a point because, of course, it move more on the pressure about the public transport. That is, I think, the way you consider if your event was well organized or not. I would say public transport is the most important evaluation system. So that is the main point. On the other point is the fact that in a city like Milan, we are, of course, smaller than Paris, but both are really smaller than Los Angeles. Every place in Milan, you can arrive in Duomo Square, that is the main square of Milan, in less than 2 hours on foot. So it's a walkable city, and even events like that should be walkable. So we worked a lot even on this direction. Okay, public transport, okay, subway. We have the new subway that connected the city airport to Duomo Square in less than quarter an hour. That is something extraordinary, even for people coming from European capitals during the day. You can come in the morning and go back in the evening without any specific problem. It's very efficient, the system. On the other side, we worked a lot on how walkable can be to move from the city center to the Olympic Village. It's less than 40 minutes by walk, and even the connection for the ice hockey arena that is less than 2 kilometers far from two subway lines, and they are connected with the new tram lines. But our idea is that, okay, you have the tram lines, but you can move also by foot to reach subway, and to be a little far from main infrastructure, in our experience, could help also not to congestion too much subway, because 10,000, 15,000 people moving from the stadium to the subway in 10 minutes, it's very hard to manage. We have a funny system for the football stadium that is very close, and it counts 600 people every 30 minutes, and then it stops. But the idea to stay 1 kilometer far helps to reduce the pressure on the subway. Okay, you can walk a little more, but on our experience, it helps to arrive at in different moments, because somebody go directly to the subway, somebody prefer to grab a beer, and so it can help that way.
Rémi, how about Paris?
So as I mentioned, out of these 40 Olympic sites, only 5 are new sites, but doesn't mean that all the existing sites didn't need investment for innovation. So as a region, we invested more than 200 million euros to renovate some sites. So this is also serving the population for the future as well. We have about 4,500 miles of bike lines in the Paris region, and we added 300 miles of new bike lanes just for the accessibility to the Olympic sites. So again, I think the architecture of our city is not the same as Los Angeles, for instance. So it's easier to walk in Paris or in Milan or in London than it is in Los Angeles. But we really want people to walk and use their bikes to go to the sites rather than to the car. Again, public transportation can also bring to everyone to the sites. Also, if we think longer terms, I'll take the example of the pool, the Olympic pool. We decided to build a new pool in an area, in a county of the Paris region that was very much less privileged than the other areas. What's interesting with this, in this county, in this community, you had a lower rate of people who knew how to swim, and kids did not really get a chance to learn to swim. We are building infrastructures for the games, and this will counterpart, and this will help this area to develop and have a better public services as well. So this is bringing also positive impact, social impact, and economic development, and so this is also how we look longer terms with the games.
That's great. Well, I'm mindful of our title here, and we talk about urban transformation versus community disruption, and it does bring up a really important point, which is that mega events are often seen as a great opportunity, but also a huge hassle for those who may or may not want to participate. So when we think about disruption, I'd love to hear, starting again with Allan and prior experience in London, but then all of you to share a bit about how did you or will you manage that in terms of demand, and what are the tools in the toolbox that you think are that worked best, or that balance that need to manage the congestion and the challenges to keep your region and city moving while also being able to welcome an onslaught of new visitors and guests to your region?
Okay, I'm going to touch on three things that from my memory of what we did to try and maximise use of public transit and minimise the impact on local residents, businesses of London and the surrounding areas. I think the first thing we did was working with Transport for London. We basically sweated the assets that they had for and maximised the capacity of the public transit the existing public transit system during the games. We ran trains earlier in the morning, we ran trains later at night, we ran higher frequencies. In some locations where possible, instead of running 2-car trains, we ran 4-car trains. We supplemented it with temporary park and ride operations where we had big car parking lots outside the city centre, and then shuttle buses into the Olympic Park and the East London Excel venues. So that was almost like the carrot side of things. We also had a lot of temporary traffic management that was put in place around the venues, similar to event parking controls and traffic restrictions that you get around a football stadium or hockey stadium in the US or anywhere in the world. So there was a lot of that restricted car access. Again, like LA, it was zero spectator car parking was provided at any of the venues, apart from blue badge parking for accessible parking that was provided at all venues. And then we supplemented that with a TDM campaign, travel demand management. I think it was something that was initiated in the Sydney 2000 Olympics a long time ago, and we took the best bits of that, learned from it, built on it. And I think there's a slide of the sort of cartoon characters. There was a lot of, if that could come up. But we had sort of three elements to that TDM campaign. One was working with businesses, particularly the freight industry, to minimise the number of trucks on the road at peak times during the Olympics. The second point was, thank you, the marketing and communications campaign. This is just one example, and you'd see this on billboards, on TV, on underground stations all over London in the build-up to games, just telling people to, quote, get ahead of the games and plan their journeys to so that we could help reduce congestion. And it was very successful. And we did that. And the third part of this campaign, the TDM campaign, was to have a journey planner on people's phones. Things have come a long way since 2012. And that provided people with bespoke information about how to travel to their venue, what their travel options were, about the existing public transit or the temporary park and ride sites or shuttle buses, or even walking and cycling. We were really pushing walking and cycling for those short journeys. I think they're the three sort of elements of what we really pushed.
Love the cheeky ads from London. I was actually just got a chance to meet with Vernon Everett from Transport for London last week when my team was in London, and all the great work that went into that. So very exciting. Rémi, or Deputy Mayor Maran, excuse me, I want to start with you. I do want to put you on the spot a little bit because you all have a little exciting tool in your toolbox, the Area C, or the congestion charge in Milano. Do you think that will play a role in how you could help manage demand? Will it be useful, or what other tools are you thinking about?
Well, we introduced a congestion charge in 2011, and I would say it was an important moment for two different motivations. First, we reduced in the inner city traffic more or less of 30%. And after a decade, it's still 30% less than we started. So it has been a long-term reduction for traffic. And this is an important result. On the other side, it was a very hard political battle. I remember that winter, every time I go to a restaurant, to a cafe, people around, they were talking about congestion charge. They were against, they were in favor, they are in favor, but they don't appreciate that rule. And on different, they were thinking on, yes, but how should I move? Am I doing the best to be sustainable? So it has been an important moment for the sustainable story of Milan, because starting from that moment, for example, we decided that, okay, we go on and we finance a new subway, and it was a big debate on that. We introduced car sharing, bike sharing, and scooter sharing. So it has been a moment where we decided we take that way, not another way. Actually, it is it helped for the event because you had a less congestion in the city center. We doubled the pedestrian area in 5 years. So it give us the push, and it helped to attract and to give a good experience, for example, for tourists, because before the World Exposition, till 2014, we had more or less 6 million of tourists every year. And now and after, in 2017-18, from 6 we moved to 9. So if we have 50% of tourists more than before, you have to create new pedestrian area, new ways to leave the city. And with all the cars driving in the center, it wouldn't be possible.
Right. Well, the great examples from both London and Milano on the virtuous cycle, right, of investment, right? You invest in transit, you get money, you can reinvest in transit. More people are taking the system, so it's all really, really good, and excited to see. Hopefully that play out. The word community disruption is touching a nerve, I imagine, for some Angelinos this week. May or may not be aware of our little closure of the 10 freeway. So I want to ask Ernesto, thinking about, what disruption means and how we think about tools in the toolbox, both on a temporary basis, things that Metro might be able to do and that might be translatable into games time opportunities as well.
Yeah, and we have, one of the things we did in an initial planning was look at London, look at other experiences and lessons learned, right? So we're planning to have a TDM program that I think would include a lot of the tools in the same toolbox that you had, Allan, in London. We're assuming that we'll have about a 20% reduction in overall traffic thanks to that TDM program. Things like, obviously, work from home, flexible schedules and things like that. But the fact that there won't be parking, spectator parking at the venues in itself, I think would also reduce some of the disruption that would otherwise, be a normal thing for our, games and other events, mega events here within the region. But again, going back to our vision, we don't have, as Paris has, we don't have every venue serviced by high capacity transit. Some venues are, but not every venue. So we're going to be relying on a system of bus-only lanes, mobility hubs, In first last mile improvements as well, we have in our legacy projects, we have a bundle of first last mile improvements to improve the way people get from a key station to a venue. So things like bike lanes, better shading in some cases, crosswalks, things like that. Again, in terms of disruption, I think we want to make it as easy as possible for people to get to a transit station or a park and ride facility. We're going to enhance those as well so that they can be on the transit system to get to a venue or close to a venue and be able to walk or bike there. Again, minimizing driving generally. Allan also touched on freight. That's an important factor here for us as well, because we have two of the busiest ports in the nation here in the region. And so we're going to have to work with our freight partners to make sure we have essentially a freight TDM program that will address, deliveries, traffic on the truck traffic on the freeways, and also rail congestion. Some of our commuter rail shares right away with the freight trains, and so they need to find little windows of time where the commuter train can go. Where the freight train is not going, right? So finding, and if we're going to increase, those train times during the games, we're going to have to find additional openings for them as well. So TDM is going to be a huge component. It's something that we're only now touching the surface on. We don't have a lot of time. 4.5 years is not a lot of time, but we hope to build on the experiences that London had, and also what Paris and Milano are doing in the next few years.
Great, thank you. And Rémi, please add your experience coming up very soon.
So we're not inventing things that are different from everywhere in the world. I think we're all working together and trying to experience different things. But maybe two things I'd like to point out. First thing is that we need to think about people adoption in the common decisions that we're making in terms of transportation. And so if it's decisions that are made and that are imposed to the population, it's harder to accept that. If you have a discussions and you try to bring people together to understand how do we want to commute in the future altogether. So I think the governance and the way you make decisions on transportation, you need to associate the population to it to make the adoption rate higher. So this is point one. Second thing, I think it's exactly the picture that you showed about London. I think preparation and explanation is key. And if you want to have people with you, you need to be transparent and to explain the situation as it will be. I think during the games in Paris, driving your private car will be complicated. I mean, not saying it would be a lie. And so if you know that, and if you're aware of this, and it is coming at a time when Parisians will be on vacations, because it's really during the time of people who are on vacation in France, the impact should be lower, and the acceptance rate should be higher. I think as a country, in every city that hosts the games is expecting some returns in terms of economic development, tourism. It's money for restaurants, it's money for derivative products, for hotels, for everyone is going to make money out of it. So you can't expect returns on investment without making any investments. And so at the same time, you need to accept that, of course, things will not be the same, and this is fine. We just need to explain it, not to impose it, and to work together on this as a common project.
That's a great point. And I think just building on that, the investments, right, the opportunities that many of you have long been planning, right, regardless of the moment in time that is the games. I'd love to put this back to Ernesto, but others please chime in. Really, there's a lot at stake going on in Los Angeles now. There's been long-term, decades-long investments through, Measure R, Measure M, and now, layering on the games a new set of priorities perhaps that are really questioning and stretching agencies, across the entire region on how they're going to deliver in the next 5 years. So how would you say that Metro is prioritizing and balancing those trade-offs and really resourcing to deliver in the next 5 years?
Yeah, it's definitely a great challenge for us and for the entire region, because there's also we're not the only game in town in terms of construction, right? LAX is constructing. Other agencies are doing a lot of construction, so it's a major challenge. First of all, I think we need to complete what we started. I think we need to fulfill our commitments. We have $17 billion worth of investment that was already started. We're going to be opening new major transportation facilities every year for the next 4 years. between now and 2028. So we're not putting the brakes on that. We are, however, as I've been mentioning before, we have a bundle of priority projects that we think are legacy projects that will be supportive of the overall transportation strategy, supportive of getting people to the games, without driving. And those includes, as I mentioned before, bus-only lanes. We've already implemented about 40 miles, almost 50 miles of bus-only lanes. We want to get to about 100 miles of bus-only lanes between now and then. Those are smaller projects. They're not, billions of dollars. They can be done fairly easily and in a short amount of time. Similarly, mobility hubs are not new stations. We're not reconfiguring or building new buildings. It's basically enhancing existing stations, making them better, making them more connected. Again, projects that we can do, Carley, within the next 4 years. And what we need is funding, frankly. That's the rub, is that we need to be able to get those funded now or in the next 6 or 8 months. Otherwise, a lot of those projects we won't be able to do, right? The bigger ones, at least. As the time passes, we won't be able to do a lot of them if we don't get the funding. But we're working on that with our state and federal partners. And I think in terms of prioritization, we are going to have to take a hard look at our resources and make sure that with whatever funding we do get, we can deliver on those projects. So it's going to be a prioritization exercise for us over the next few months.
Thank you. Well, to continue on the stream of investments and to acknowledge we are at this fantastic conference and kicking this off on CoMotion and digital transformation and technology opportunities, I do want to come back to that kind of full circle. So we'll start with Deputy Mayor Maran, but would love to hear what Milano is thinking about when it comes to investments in digital strategy, when it comes to payments or customer experience or data. How are you hoping to make it easier for people to navigate the mobility system and things that perhaps you could ask for a call to action or support? And you're here with these wonderful global companies and partners around the world at CoMotion this week.
Well, I think technology is decisive to have efficiency on mobility and on public transport. First, I would say that from the public sector, you have a lack of data and information compared to the one produced by the private market. That is a problem, because you work in an older way compared to the private sector, and we should work more on integrating information, because on mobility especially, public sector is still decisive in organizing more or less half of the system of mobility. We are facing in Italy a political battle on all the for us innovative but not innovative services, because for example, we still don't have more or less Uber and this kind of services, because Italian law doesn't allow it easily. But as you can imagine, it's a problem compared on the experience of tourists, because we have just taxi. We have more or less the same number of taxi than 10 years ago, but 50% of tourists more and people growing up. So this is starting to be a problem, and we are increasing the number of taxis, but it helps, but it's not a solution. We are curious about the vertical port. Paris will experiment. We had an approval by the city council to do the same in Milan. They voted last week, but we will arrive a little later than Paris, so it's interesting to see how it works. I think that we made a great effort to improve the payment system. Actually, by credit card, you can do more or less everything. We should obtain better results on how to manage data to move better. And on the other side, I would focus on a point. In the European policies, we are focusing a lot to promote electric vehicles. That is probably important, but maybe not so important like we are pushing. In my idea, it's not just a matter on how much a car pollutes. Okay, it's important, but we should reduce the number of cars circulating. And so I think we should push more on driverless system. I'm curious because I know that in California they are starting with some experiment on that. I think it will be the next big thing for cities. So curious to see if it will work and how long it will take to work.
Anyone else? Well, we're getting close to time, so thank you for that. This was fantastic. I would love to make sure, though, that we hit on kind of two other quick things. Just your honest hot take from your experience working on the games and special event planning. Has it been worth it? And are you excited what do you hope really that you will see when this event comes to your region? And really to keep it very focused, maybe one key legacy that you hope that will be left in your region. We'll start here with Rémi.
The experience. We want to offer a great experience for visitors and for citizens living in the region. So it has to be a catalyst of something bigger. The games have to be a catalyst of the future of the region.
Ernesto.
I think similarly, I think we would want to have Angelenos feel proud of the city, of a world city, that we can put on a world event of this caliber, of this magnitude. And then in terms of transportation specifically, we do want to see the games as a catalyst for a shift in the way we use transport in the city. Less cars, more public transportation.
Okay, very quickly from London, I think the thing I'd say is Angelenos, enjoy it. Because you only get to plan and deliver transportation in your home city once in your lifetime. I was lucky enough to do that in London. And you walk around London, Transport for London, you bump into people that you worked with, and there's just a mutual respect that, yeah, we did that, we pulled it off, it's great. So Angelenos, get involved. It is fun. It's hard work, but it is fun.
Well, for our experience, even in the previous big events we hosted, I think the victory is when you don't talk about public transport during and after the events. If they don't talk, it's a victory. And so we could focus on the fact that it's Olympic Games, and Olympic Games is a symbol of friendship and peace. And we really need peace in this moment.
Well, we'll end on that. Fantastic. Once in a lifetime opportunity for these cities. You all have been a fantastic panel. Let's give a round of applause. Thank you for being here.